Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The heavy steel bolt of the detention wing slammed shut with the finality of a coffin lid, the sound echoing violently through the hollow silence of St. Jude's Academy. I stopped breathing. I didn't dare inhale, not when the air suddenly felt too thin, sucked dry by the sheer, suffocating presence of the only other person left in the building. Scream all you want, scholarship boy. A low, velvet voice purred from the shadows of the archive stacks, dripping with a terrifying, predatory amusement. The storm knocked out the security grid. No one is coming for us until dawn. I spun around, my sneakers squeaking against the polished marble floor, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Emerging from the darkness like a specter of old money and cruelty was Caius Thorne. He didn't walk. He stalked, his movements fluid and lazy, like a panther that had already eaten and was simply playing with its food. His school blazer, distinct with the gold embroidery of the student council president, was unbuttoned, his tie loosened to reveal the sharp, pale column of his throat. "You did this," I accused, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to sound defiant. I backed up until my shoulder blades hit the cold wood of a bookshelf. "You rigged the scheduling system. You're the reason I'm here." Caius stopped 3 feet away, close enough that I could smell him. A heady, overwhelming mix of crushed mint, expensive tobacco, and the ozone scent of the approaching thunderstorm. He was an alpha in every sense of the word, not just biologically, but socially. The heir to the Thorne conglomerate, the king of this school, and the man who had made my life a living hell for 3 years. "Rigged is such a clumsy word, Julian," Caius drawled, his eyes, hues of molten steel, raking over me with an intensity that made my skin burn. "I simply made an executive decision. We have unfinished business." I swallowed hard. I was a beta, or so my record stated. I had spent my entire life on suppressants, hiding the truth of my omega nature to keep my scholarship. In a school like St. Jude's, omegas were trophies or toys, not valedictorians. But tonight, I had left my bag in the locker room. My suppressants were wearing off, and locked in a ventilation-sealed room with a prime alpha like Caius Thorne was a death sentence. "I have nothing to say to you," I spat, crossing my arms over my chest, trying to make myself smaller, less noticeable. "You got my brother expelled. You ruined his future." Caius tilted his head, a dark smirk playing on his lips. "Your brother was selling exam answers to the highest bidder. I merely cleaned up the trash. But we aren't here to talk about your brother." He took a step closer, invading my personal space. The air around him crackled with static electricity. "We're here because for 3 years, you have been the only person in this godforsaken institution who refuses to bow to me. And I'm curious to see how long that resolve lasts when there's nowhere left to run." The lights above us flickered and died. A boom of thunder shook the foundation of the library, and we were plunged into near-total darkness, illuminated only by the jagged flashes of lightning tearing through the tall Gothic windows. "Stay away from me, Thorne," I warned, moving sideways along the shelf, trying to put a table between us. "Or what?" His voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "You'll report me? To whom?" "The headmaster who eats out of my father's hand." I heard movement to my left and scrambled to the right, but a hand shot out of the darkness, gripping my wrist with bruising force. I gasped, the heat of his skin searing through my shirt. He yanked me forward, spinning me around until my back was pressed against his chest, his arm locking across my throat, pinning me in place. "Let me go," I thrashed, kicking back, but he was solid as a rock. "Shoo," he whispered directly into my ear, his breath hot and damp. "Do you feel that, Julian? That heat rising under your skin? You've been hiding something." Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through my anger. He could smell it. The pheromones were beginning to leak through my failing suppressants, the sweet, distressing scent of a terrified omega. "I don't know what you're talking about," I lied, my voice cracking. Caius buried his nose in the crook of my neck, inhaling deeply. I shuddered, a traitorous wave of weakness buckling my knees. "Liar," he growled, the sound vibrating through his chest and into my back. "Citrus and vanilla. You're an omega. A hidden one. That explains so much. The aggression, the overcompensation, The way you look at me when you think I'm not watching. I look at you with hatred. I yelled, stomping on his foot. He didn't even flinch. Instead, he spun me around and slammed me against the nearest heavy oak table. He leaned over me, caging me in with his arms on either side of my hips. In the lightning flash, his eyes were predatory, glowing with a biological imperative that terrified me. Hatred is just passion without a place to go, Caius murmured. And right now, Julian, we have all night to find it a destination. You can't do this, I gasped, the heat in my body turning into a fever. The biological reaction was starting, the preheat. It was agonizing. My body was betraying me, recognizing the alpha in front of me as a potential mate, demanding submission. It's against the school code. Caius laughed, a dark, harsh sound. I am the code. But then he stopped. He pulled back an inch, his nostrils flaring. He looked at my face, really looked at it. He saw the sweat beading on my forehead, the genuine terror in my eyes, the way my hands were shaking uncontrollably not just from fear, but from the chemical crash of the suppressants leaving my system. The cruelty in his eyes flickered, replaced by something unreadable. A frown marred his perfect features. You're in pain, he stated, the mockery gone. My medication. I wheezed, clutching the edge of the table until my knuckles turned white. It's wearing off. The withdrawal, it's worse than the heat itself. Caius stared at me for a long, agonizing second. The alpha instinct to dominate was warring with something else, the instinct to protect. In the hierarchy of our world, an alpha in the presence of a distressed omega was a dangerous variable. They could either destroy or defend. He swore softly, a curse word that sounded strange in his aristocratic accent. He pushed himself off the table, turning his back to me. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing away into the shadows. Where is your bag? He demanded aggressively. Locker room. I groaned, sliding down to the floor as cramps seized my stomach. Locked. You locked us in. Damn it, Caius hissed. He walked to the heavy steel doors he had bragged about earlier. He threw his weight against them, rattling the handle, but the electronic maglocks were dead and sealed tight. He kicked the door, the metal booming, but it held fast. He turned back to me. I was curled in a ball on the cold marble, shivering violently. The temperature in the room was dropping rapidly as the storm killed the heating systems. Caius Thorne, the Ice Prince, the tyrant, looked down at me. Then, with a sigh of resignation, he began to strip off his blazer. Thorne, I whispered, my vision blurring. He didn't answer. He dropped to his knees beside me. He wasn't gentle. He didn't know how to be, but his movements were efficient. He bundled his heavy, expensive blazer around my trembling shoulders. It smelled like him, concentrated and powerful. Instead of frightening me, the scent suddenly felt like an anchor. You're freezing, he said gruffly. And you're going into shock. Why do you care? I chattered, pulling the blazer tighter. You wanted to break me. I wanted to win, Caius corrected, his voice lower now, devoid of the earlier malice. He sat down on the floor, leaning his back against the table leg, and pulled me roughly toward him. Come here. If you stay on the marble, you'll get hypothermia. I resisted for a second, but the warmth radiating from him was irresistible. I let him pull me between his legs, my back against his chest. He wrapped his arms around me, effectively cocooning me. This changes nothing, I muttered, though my eyes were fluttering shut. The proximity was overwhelming. His alpha pheromones were rolling off him in waves, attempting to soothe my distress. It was a biological response he couldn't control any more than I could control my heat. Shut up, Julian, he murmured, resting his chin on top of my head. We sat in silence for a long time, the storm raging outside. The lightning flashes were the only clock we had. Why? I asked eventually, the pain in my stomach subsiding to a dull ache under the influence of his proximity. Why did you really target me all these years? It wasn't just my brother. Caius tightened his grip slightly. You were the only one who didn't look at me like a bank account or a god. You looked at me like I was a person. A terrible person, but a person. It was irritating. And fascinating. So you decided to torment me? I'm an alpha, Julian, he said, as if that explained everything. We chase what we can't catch. And you ran faster and harder than anyone else. I hate you, I whispered, but there was no venom in it anymore. I know, he replied. His hand moved, hesitating, before resting over my stomach where the cramps were worst. His palm was incredibly hot. Is this helping? I bit my lip. It was helping. It was helping too much. Yes. Good. The hours dragged on. The physical barrier between us had shattered, leaving something raw and exposed. I was drifting in and out of a feverish sleep, anchored only by the steady beat of his heart against my back and the scent of sandalwood. Sometime deep in the night, the fever spiked. I whimpered, thrashing in his hold. The withdrawal was peaking. I needed something. I needed him. It was a humiliation I couldn't voice, but my body screamed it. Caius shifted, turning me in his arms, so I faced him. In the darkness, his eyes caught a stray beam of moonlight breaking through the clouds. They were dilated, black holes of intent. Julian, he warned, his voice a ragged growl. You need to stop squirming. My control has limits. It hurts, I gasped, clutching the lapels of his white dress shirt. He looked at me, a war raging behind his eyes. The predator was back, but the cruelty was gone, replaced by a desperate hunger. I can help, he whispered, his voice rough. But if I cross this line, there is no going back to how we were. You won't be the scholarship boy, and I won't just be the class president. You will be mine. It was a warning. It was a promise. It was a threat. My rational mind told me to push him away. He was the enemy. He was everything I despised. But my instincts, stripped bare by the heat and the fear, saw only the alpha who had kept me warm, the man who was currently holding himself back with a terrifying amount of restraint. I don't want to go back, I breathed, the admission tearing itself from my throat. Caius didn't hesitate. He surged forward, his mouth capturing mine in a kiss that wasn't tentative or sweet. It was possessing. It was acclaiming. He tasted of mint and dominance. I melted into him, my hands tangling in his hair, pulling him closer. The kiss deepened, becoming frantic. He bit my lower lip, drawing a drop of blood, and lapped it up with a groan. His hands roamed over my body, possessing every inch of me through the layers of clothing. The friction was electric, sparking a fire that burned away the cold of the library. Say it, he commanded against my lips, his hand gripping the back of my neck, forcing me to look at him. Say you belong to me. I faltered, my pride making one last stand. He nipped the sensitive skin below my ear, sending a jolt of pleasure straight to my spine. Say it, Julian. I belong to you, I sobbed, surrendering. Caius, please. The use of his first name broke the last of his restraint. He pushed me back down onto the pile of discarded blazers and cushions we had scavenged, covering my body with his. For the rest of the night, the storm outside was nothing compared to the storm inside the detention wing. There was no more fighting, no more politics, no more scholarship or hierarchy. There was only the ancient, rhythmic dance of two souls finally colliding. The morning sun was blinding. It cut through the tall windows, searing my eyelids. I groaned, shielding my eyes, and tried to sit up. My body felt heavy, aching in places I hadn't known existed, but the fever was gone. The agonizing hollowness was filled with a strange, buzzing contentment. I was alone on the floor. Panic seized me instantly. Had he left? Was it all a game? A cruel trick to finally break me by taking the one thing I had left, my dignity? I scrambled up, clutching my torn shirt together, looking around the library. The heavy steel doors were wide open. Standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the morning light of the hallway, was Caius. He was fully dressed, his uniform impeccable again, save for the fact that his tie was missing. He was speaking to the headmaster and the bewildered security chief. I froze. If he told them, if he exposed me as an Omega, I would lose everything. My scholarship, my future. Caius turned. He saw me standing there, disheveled and terrified. The headmaster looked past him, his eyes widening as he saw me. Mr. Vane, we are terribly sorry for the malfunction. I hope. He looked between me and Caius, suspicion dawning on his face. I hope nothing untoward occurred. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. Caius stepped in front of me, blocking the headmaster's view. His posture was relaxed, arrogant, utterly in command. There was a security failure, headmaster, Caius said smoothly, his voice carrying that terrifying authority. Mr. Vane was injured during the blackout. I assisted him. Injured. The headmaster frowned. Yes, Caius said, turning his head slightly to lock eyes with me over his shoulder. His gaze was intense, possessive, and reassuring. And from this moment forward, Mr. Vane is under my personal protection. Any issues regarding his scholarship or his medical status will go through me. Is that understood? The headmaster paled. The implication was clear. Caius Thorne had claimed me. To touch me now was to declare war on the Thorne family. Of course, Mr. Thorne. Absolutely. Caius walked back to me. He didn't care about the audience. He reached out and adjusted my collar, his fingers brushing the bite mark he had left on my neck, hidden just beneath the fabric. Go to the dorms, Julian, he said softly, handing me a fresh bottle of water, and I realized with a jolt, a packet of high-grade suppressants he must have bullied the school nurse for. Get some sleep. We have dinner tonight. Dinner? I blinked. Yes. A date, he smirked, the predator back in his smile. But this time, I was in on the joke. Unless you want another detention? I looked at the open door, then back at the man who had been my enemy yesterday and was something entirely different today. I think I'll take dinner, I replied, a small smile touching my lips. Caius leaned in, whispering so only I could hear. Good choice. Because I'm never letting you go again. And that is how the viper tamed the wolf, by realizing they were both just searching for warmth in the dark. If you enjoyed seeing Caius take absolute control, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a tormentor like Caius, or is some history too dark to love? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then, prompt image. Prompt. Masterpiece, best quality, high-res, 1.2. Korean manhwa style, semi-realistic, digital art. 2 men, BL, Yaoi, man 1. Tall, sharp jawline, messy black hair, predatory smirk, wearing unbuttoned elite school blazer, white shirt slightly open, intense gray eyes, alpha aura, dominant pose. Man 2. Slightly shorter, messy brown hair, flushed cheeks, defiant but vulnerable expression, wearing disheveled school uniform, leaning against bookshelf, submissive body language. Background is dark Gothic library, rain against tall windows, lightning flash illumination, books scattered on floor, dramatic shadows, cinematic composition, sharp focus, intense atmosphere.